chapter begins with Yuji continuing to lay haymakers onto Sukuna's body, and during the sequence, Yuji gets reminded of Chozo, further fueling its rage and outputs his all against Sukuna. I could make a point here and say that Yuji is once again letting his emotions get the better of him. He's done this before in his early stages and have gone better later in the story, like with Higuruma dying, but with Chozo, I guess Yuji not finishing Sukuna in this moment, it was probably for the best, because next time he'll be locked in and better mentally. I'll talk more about Yuji and his main character role at the end of the video. I've seen some takes regarding that subject, and there are things that I disagree with, so moving on. A figure of Gojo suddenly appears at a distance, and through the heavy smoke, we see that it's Yuta Okotsu inside the body of Gojo. In terms of how Sukuna was able to tell it was Yuta, for one, Sukuna knew for sure that he killed Gojo. Also knew that Kenjaku had to have died since the backup plan for the merger initiated, and at the same time, that's when Yuta appeared on the battlefield, indicating that it was him who killed Kenjaku. So from also accessing Megumi's memories, already knowing about Yuta's copy technique, then I think when Sukuna first saw the stitches on Gojo's forehead, he just put 2 and 2 together, deducing that Yuta must have copied Kenjaku's body hopping ability to be in the body of Gojo. Sukuna punches Yuji away, walks toward Yuta, and thrillingly laughs, saying, "So that's how you want to play? My apologies. It seems that I've underestimated you. I didn't think you were capable of going this far, Okotsu Yuta," and that's pretty big coming from Sukuna here, because first of all, he calls Yuta by his full name, and anytime Sukuna addresses you by your full name, it means that you've earned his respect. I don't think Sukuna has ever apologized for underestimating anyone's strength or potential before, so it's nice to see him completely acknowledge Yuta here. In the next page, it starts a flashback from the 1-month time skip. This is when Yuta first brought about the idea of taking over Gojo's body if Gojo were to die in his fight against Sukuna, and everyone is kind of against this at first, but Maki specifically, the story makes it clear in showing how Maki is very opposed to Yuta's idea, and we'll get back to her, but while Hakari also agrees with everyone, he says that if all of their other plans end up failing and they have no more options left, then he will vouch for Yuta to do whatever he wants. But in terms of how Yuta will be able to take over Gojo's body, this chapter confirms that Rika does need to consume a body part of the person that they want to copy techniques with, so Rika eating Kenjaku. Then the thought of Yuta having Gojo's limitless comes to mind, but Shoko says it wouldn't be possible without the 6 eyes, and the 6 eyes isn't something you can copy since it's not a curse technique but a physical attribute instead. So by the time Yuta takes over Gojo's body, 6 eyes would be gone since Gojo would be dead. Maki brings up how Yuta can only use his copy techniques when Rika is fully manifested, and a fully manifested Rika lasts about 5 minutes. So if Yuta was in Gojo's body via using Kenjaku's curse technique, but the 5-minute timer of using copy techniques ends, then what would happen to Yuta? Would he just stay in Gojo's body, or would he die after the 5 minutes? This depends if Kenjaku's body hopping technique requires a constant activation, a single activation, or an activation set between intervals. I personally believe it requires just a single activation, meaning, for example, when Kenjaku took over Geto's body, he didn't have to constantly activate his technique to stay in that body, because for example, when he's using curse spear manipulation in Geto's body, then technically he would be using 2 techniques at the same time, his body hopping and curse spear manipulation. But as we know in the story, you can't simultaneously activate 2 curse techniques at the same time, Sukuna's case being Megumi's 10 shadows and his own slashes. So that's why I think Kenny's is just a single activation, as in once you first take over the body, a process is fully complete. But if it does need a constant activation from the user, then yeah, theoretically Yuta would die, because after the 5 minutes is over, he wouldn't be able to maintain his body hop with Gojo. These are just the possibilities that Meme laid out, so maybe there are other options out there, but all things considered, Yuta's life status is walking on grass for sure. With all the discussion about the plan, Maki comes in and says, "Quit talking as if it's settled. I don't like this plan one bit." Yuta replies, and I'm gonna read all this dialogue together, then break it down after in an analysis format, so bear with me here. But Yuta replies saying, "Listen guys, I'm getting pretty ticked off by your reactions. No matter how you look at it, it's what we should do." Kusakabe responds to Yuta, "Well, yeah, sure, it's what we should do only if we were focused on the plan. But we have to worry about you as a person first." And Yuta says, "Do you realize who we're up against? The strongest sorcerer in history, Yeoman Sukuna. If throwing away our humanity gives gives us a shot at winning, then we should throw it away. Does becoming a monster scare you that badly? Maki tries to calm Yuta down, saying, listen, you're extremely important to everyone here. And Yuta replies, what about Gojo-sensei? Is he not important? We've always pushed the burden of being a monster onto him alone. If Gojo dies, one of us will have to take his spot. And if no one else wants to step up, then I will. Wow, what a beautiful response from Yuta. So let's break this down. Like I said in the beginning, I believe this chapter calls back to many moments and themes from the past, including the very first chapter, not just chapter 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen, but chapter 1 of its prequel, volume 0. In the first page of the entire series, the higher-ups are discussing about executing Yuta because he is depicted as some monster. He is cursed and has unwillingly harmed people with that curse. However, who was it that saved Yuta and gave him a second chance in life? Who was it that saw Yuta not by the monster or curse he carried within him, but as the human being he was? Yeah, it was Gojo. Gojo vouched to take care of Yuta since he didn't want Yuta to feel or experience the same things he did, being alone, looked at as a weapon, a burden for the Jujutsu world. One of the series' biggest themes is the solitude that comes with immense strength. Gojo is a perfect example. He is alone because he is the strongest. It's best portrayed through his curse technique, the limitless, giving infinite distance between him and others. It's not that no one ever cared about Gojo. No, his students, colleagues, they all loved him and so does he. But just like he said in chapter 236, quote, you can make a flower bloom, you can admire it, but you can't tell that flower, I want you to understand. End quote. Of course, the flowers symbolizing his students. At first, we are to believe that no one can truly understand Gojo unless they are in that same position with him of being the strongest. That's why Geto, at the time, is the only person who understood Gojo because he was the strongest with him, and why Gojo believes that he had lost his humanity after his best friend went away. Yet, in this chapter, Yuta becomes one of the few who could truly empathize with Gojo. Why? Because Yuta, someone who is blessed to have found his humanity through friendships before joining Jutsu High, Yuta knows what that solitude is like and recognizes Gojo's burden of being the monster alone. That's why he got angry when Maki denied his plan, saying, oh, it's because Yuta, you're important to everyone. Because while it's true and further shows how blessed Yuta is to have that support and have people relying on him, something that he exactly wished for back in volume 0, Yuta believes that the same support should be applied to Gojo, how Gojo shouldn't take this monster role all by himself. And when that monster dies, who is willing to strip away their humanity and take the next spot to fight Sukuna? Yuta Okotsu, the character with the most humanity. Yuta is willing to take over the corpse of the person that saved him when he was at his lowest for the sake of protecting the people he loves. Whether it's considered wrong or inhumane, Yuta will choose whatever is necessary to save others. I like that from him because it proves how much he's grown in the series, make his own decisions, his own choice from a very tough, morally questionable situation, right? I mean, taking over your mentor's body, that sounds very inhumane by nature. However, Yuta is able to see value in that, to achieve a greater good, to save his friends, and to save the world. He's not a hero at the end of the day. He is a Jujutsu sorcerer, and sometimes the life of a sorcerer isn't to make decisions that satisfy the status quo. Just like how later in this chapter, Gojo, who didn't know if his actions were going to be right, still proceeded to kill all the higher-ups, people who were in control of the current Jujutsu society. Now, does Yuta taking over Gojo's body disrespect Gojo in any way? Personally, I don't think so. Don't get me wrong, Gojo's death is tragic, and we'll get back to that in a bit. But they asked for his permission, which is very important here because compared to all the other body swaps, Sukuna and Kenjaku both take over bodies against the vessel's will, or Kenjaku takes the body when it's dead. Likely he would kill them, so it's not the exact same as Sukuna, but the point is, they do it for their own mischievous, evil reasons, whereas Yuta, on the other hand, he's doing it out of desperation to save his companions. I think it's noteworthy to mention Yuta asking for consent because it contrasts Kenjaku and Sukuna. So, if Gojo himself said that he doesn't care what happens to his body, body after he dies, a similar answer with the King of Curses, then yeah, I don't really see how this is disrespectful. It's not that Yuta wanted to do this, heck, that's why he appeared to be more on edge and stressed during the Gojo vs Sukuna fight, not just because he's worried about his sensei, but because he knew what he would have to do if Gojo lost. If you still don't feel that this is right, if you feel that it's so wrong for Gojo's body to be exploited in this manner, honestly, I think that's intentional because, like I said, the characters themselves, Yuta, he didn't want this to happen either. It's harder for him than anyone else, but when push comes to shove, when the situation demands it, he's gotta do anything he can to protect his loved ones, even if it means taking the corpse of your sensei and losing your humanity. You know, I think others will take it as, in the end, Gojo died while being left with his title as the strongest because his body is being used as a weapon like how he always was in life, never escaping that burden of being a tool for Jujutsu. And while that is a tragic ending fitting to his character, real, dark, sad, another way you could look at it is that Yuta is helping to continue and build on Gojo's legacy as long as more people don't die, and maybe Yuji could have since Sukuna was about to open his domain expansion. As long as they win the battle against Sukuna, in the end, Gojo wouldn't have died being the strongest alone anymore because he would have succeeded in his goal in fostering a new generation of students to work together and be the strongest sorcerer in history, like Yuji wished for in the beginning of the series. Gojo Sensei, please teach me to be the strongest just like you. If Yuji and everyone else end up beating Sukuna, then I think that Gojo wouldn't have died being the strongest alone. In the next page, we learn how Amai's curse technique works. He can basically amplify the sugar in his own body and output it into reality, thus how we see him manifest jello from his hand. Amai says he gets pretty lightheaded when he uses it though, which explains the scene where he saved Angel, softening her fall by creating a large jello as for a landing platform. With his technique, Shoko suggests he should join the medical team using his sugar powers to supplement the patient's brain, and I like how the page ends with Amai being happy because he's got an important role in this Sukuna fight, and then the next page starts with him being shocked and frightened seeing the reality of what these Jujutsu sorcerers end up dealing with, because the next page jumps forward to when Yuta got slashed by Sukuna. However, he's able to still maintain his consciousness thanks to Rika, but he's running out of time. That said, Shoko has just finished stitching up Gojo's body. From the plans they discussed a month ago, they know what must be done next. Returning to the present time, the chapter ends with both Sukuna and Yuta activating their domain expansions. A rematch between Malevolent Shrine and Unlimited Void happens once again. Wow, so first of all, can I just say that this is one of the best double spreads we've seen in the JJK manga. In the end, the narrative states, how does one counter Ryomen Sukuna's open barrier domain? By Gojo Satoru's hands, a solution is revealed yet again. And the way I interpreted this was that before Gojo died against Sukuna, after their first round of domain clashes, I think Gojo found another way to tackle Sukuna's open barrier domain, and now that Yuta has body hopped into Gojo's body, Yuta's retained his memories and knows the new counter method that Gojo thought of before he died. Because I don't think Yuta would do the same tactics like shrinking or expanding his barrier to cover Malevolent Shrine's range. Maybe he will, but considering Sukuna has already seen and faced those methods before, I think a new counter will be used. And like I said earlier in the review, I do believe Kenjaku's technique is a single activation, so if Yuta were to die, I don't think it would be when his 5-minute timer runs out, but when and if Sukuna kills him in this fight. Because to be honest, I don't see the other way around happening. I don't really see Yuta getting the finishing blow on Sukuna. I think that would be, Yuji's role, but more on him later. Now, while you can't use two curse techniques at the exact same time, you can switch between them intermittently. As we saw with Kenjaku, he uses both Geto's curse spear manipulation and Kaori's anti-gravity technique, so maybe Yuta could do the same with his copy and the limitless. And it would also be interesting to see if he even can use the limitless to the level and proficiency of Gojo. Obviously, I don't think he can. It's implied that he doesn't and can't copy the 6 eyes, so yeah, JJK will be on break next week. I want to hold this discussion and save it for a video. Maybe I can get a collab on that. Anyways, my last discussion will be about Yuji, as promised in the beginning. So a topic that I've commonly heard regarding this chapter is that Yuji got done dirty. Some people don't like how he got tossed aside with the focus shifting towards Yuta's plot twist, and obviously it's okay if you have this opinion. Even with what I'm about to say. If I can't change your mind just a little bit, then that's fine. I hope people understand that it's, good to be open-minded and accept that people will have different opinions than you. That being said, here's my own personal thoughts. After rereading the Shinjuku arc, I noticed and felt that Yuji has appeared the most in this Sukuna fight than any other character. Obviously, he's the MC, so it's expected for him to have the most screen time, but I'm just adding on to the point that, he's already got his amazing moments. I would even argue that Yuji has done the most damage to Sukuna with his many black flashes and dangerous soul punches. So the moment when he got quote-unquote tossed away in this chapter, you shouldn't feel like Yuji got put aside again. I think a reread will change people's mind about this, because if you wanted Yuji to continue his already insane hot streak here and finish Sukuna, then that means you expected the series to end, which is not a bad thing. JJK could have ended there or not, because Sukuna was about to open his domain expansion. But so Yuta arriving in the nick of time here, all this should mean is that we are getting to see another fight. It means the series isn't ending just yet. But even disregarding the fact that Sukuna was about to open his domain, I've seen people say that the way Sukuna punched Yuji away looked as if he could have done this the entire time, but the reason why he didn't is because Sukuna wasn't going all out, as stated by Urume before. Now, people might disagree with me on this, which is fine, but I think when Urume said that Sukuna wasn't going all out, I thought that was up until Sukuna used his furnace, because the moment when Sukuna did use his furnace, that's when we got the returning panel of Urume saying they won. I feel like people are intertwining or confusing the not going all out statement, and so to explain how, easily Sukuna punched Yuji here then, well, it's a mix of two things. One, like I said in the very beginning of the video, Yuji thought about Chozo in the heat of the moment, which is a major factor to losing his control, and two, when the Yuta plot twist happened, it broke both of their momentum, but Sukuna just simply processed and recovered that situation faster than Yuji, who again just let his emotions get the better of him. That's how Sukuna got the opportunity to punch an open and confused Yuji. I don't think he could have done this before while Yuji was tearing his guts, or I don't think it's anything about Sukuna not trying his best or whatever. The whole Yuji stuff can easily be fixed in retrospect. I feel like making the complaint about Yuji right now isn't fair, since again, it's not like Yuta versus Sukuna is gonna be the last fight ever, and if it is, if Yuji doesn't get his get back on Sukuna, then we can judge. Then we can make that criticism of Yuji's role in the final arc. But so far, Yuji's objectively done and appeared the most in this fight. Obviously, the other cast has had great moments too, but Yuji's many black flashes and the constant soul punches, they were tearing Sukuna's condition and output the most. Like I said, I think a reread will reshape people's doubts and thoughts that they had with not just this chapter, but recent stuff happening in JJK, because I've seen some comments saying that Gege has no idea what he's doing, or he's coming up with stuff on the fly, but no, like this plot twist, for example, was planned from the beginning, and you could tell if you, again, either reread or really paid attention. Though, of course, that's just my opinion, and if you agree, disagree, or have anything else you want to add on, then feel free to let me know down in the comment section. Again, I don't want this video to sound like my opinions are right. As long as it's, respectful, it's fine to disagree on things. With that being said, thank you so much for watching.